I'm fairly certain you have goals and dreams. We all have. That's the beauty of life. We're put on the planet to expand, to become more aware of our own conscious powers. But for most of us it might still be a tricky thing, so let's look at it from another angle again, this time from Neville Goddard. He had a term that he called moving under compulsion. Well, after careful analyzation of years of study, my conclusion was, if all contradicting thoughts cease to be, well, that is when you can start moving under compulsion to make your dreams happen. So if that's what you want to do, check out the rest of this video. Let's get into it.
So I'm telling you of the power within you. And that power is your own wonderful human imagination. So tonight, take it seriously. If you really have an objective in this world, and you're waiting for something to happen on the outside to make it so, forget it. Do it in your own wonderful human imagination. Actually bring it into being in your own imagination. Conjure a scene which would imply the fulfillment of that dream. And lose yourself in the act as you contemplate it. And completely lose yourself in that state. If you're completely absorbed in it, you would objectify it and you would see it seemingly independent of your perception of it. But even if you do not have that intensity, if you lose yourself in it and feel it to be true, the imaginal act, then drop it in a way you do not know. It will become true.
Moving on the compulsion. I want you to think about this idea. If you know where you want to go in life, how do you get there? Well, first of all, you have to understand that your behavior is determined by how we use the conscious and subconscious mind. How we are thinking and imagining, but also how we're feeling about those thoughts and imagination. Now, this is something Neville Goddard talked about. He talked about moving under compulsion. So I want you to think about this. What do you think happens to your life and your overall enjoyment out of it if literally all contradicting thoughts cease to be? Now, this might seem impossible, and in reality it's fairly difficult, but it is possible. This is something we always want to keep in mind. Many of the things we think are impossible, or that we never really take for a serious consideration about, because we think it's just absurd. Again, because somewhere in your mind you think it's impossible. Well, it's not impossible. So think about your own goals, the things you want in your life. How many times have you thought that you couldn't do it? And because of that, nothing really changed or improved. Now, when we talk about moving under compulsion, we talk about letting all contradicting thoughts cease to exist within the mind. So the clear idea that we build an imagination of where we want to go can put us under a so-called compulsion to act differently, so we are able to create the life that we want. Now, remember that stick person that I showed in previous videos? Well, today I wanted to share a different version. So if we look at it right now, you see the stick version, and it has a red cross through the senses and an arrow, a red arrow pointing at the conscious and subconscious mind. Now, this is what we're going to be working with, because if you move under compulsion, that can only happen if you know how to work with your conscious and subconscious mind. The cross through the senses this time around is because you want to totally ignore the evidence of your senses. You want to stop letting the outside world control you. Over and over again, we got to repeat the same point from different angles. Now, what are we going to get at? If we change the picture around again, you now see a red arrow pointing downwards. It's pointing at something that says our action causes a reaction, which then creates the results. So in your life, you could say your actions cause a reaction, creating your results. Now, how are these results made? Well, they're made by how you use your conscious subconscious mind. Okay, so let's change the picture again. And now we're going to get into the juicy stuff concerning moving under compulsion explained. Now, what I want you to understand is that when all contradicting thoughts cease to be, you are actually in a position to pretty much achieve whatever you set out to achieve for yourself. Now, where do you start? You start in your conscious mind, as this picture says, right in the middle, conscious mind. Underneath it, in red text, I wrote, decide what you want. See the result in your mind's eye. Now, this is very important, because most people can think or imagine very easily. If they make just a tiny bit of effort, they can very easily discover and see within their minds that they, have the ability to think and pretty much see whatever they want. So in this case, you want to start thinking and seeing the sort of life that you want to live inside your mind. You're not going to look outside of yourself. You could take inspiration from things outside of yourself. Then you're using your senses in the best way possible, because you're using them to help you get closer to where you want to go. So that's the only way you technically want to use your senses. Right now, you're witnessing this video through your senses, through the sense of sight and hearing. So you don't want to block the things out that are to your benefit. Now you want to start deciding for yourself where you want to go. Now this is the thing, most people can do it. I've discovered for myself, and in general observation, most people could give you an idea of where they want to go. Doesn't mean that they're emotionally involved in it. Now that is step 2, as the picture says. Underneath the conscious mind, we have the subconscious mind again. This time we would say, focus on the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Now this is something you really have to take serious, because years ago when I first studied Neville Goddard's material concerning this concept, feeling the wish fulfilled, I studied it, it made sense, but I didn't necessarily work with it instantly. And you could be in the same position where you study my videos or other people's material, but it doesn't mean that you're actually applying it, and that's what we're getting after. Now you want to start focusing on the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Why? Because it's that feeling. It's the feeling, awareness, that feelingness within you that ultimately puts you under that so-called state of moving under a compulsion so you can get what you want. Now, if I look back at my own life concerning moving under compulsion, I've found out that every time I consciously set a goal of where I want to go without feeling it, well, then it feels like I'm forcing myself to do stuff. But when we're talking about being inspired, it's a feeling. It's not just an idea that pops into your mind. They are ideas that will pop into your mind when you're inspired, but you also instantly notice an emotional connection to those ideas. You feel motivated, you could say a sort of feeling of passion for those ideas. You just feel it. When you have a good idea in your mind of what you should be doing in order to improve your life, you will feel it. Once you act on those ideas, you're basically moving under a compulsion to make it happen. Now what happens with most people is that they might stumble upon good ideas on how to improve their lives, but due to all these contradicting thoughts that they're still entertaining, slowly but surely the idea loses power. So in a way what we're saying, and I think Neville said this in one of his lectures himself, in a way what we're saying is that you want to become possessed almost by your own dreams. You want to become controlled by the dream itself that you're having for your own life. Again, this is a very subtle thing. Have you ever looked at your own life and thought about certain areas? I want to improve this, I want to do this, but you're not moving under that so-called mysterious compulsion. Now, being compelled to do something simply means that you reach a point that you will do it no matter what needs to be done. So you have an idea of where you want to go, all the contradicting thoughts are gone. Why? Because you have learned to focus simply on the emotional essence of your dream, on how it makes you feel, because once you're connected to the emotional state, well then you'll be compelled to move in a certain direction to make your dreams come true. Now if we go back to the picture again, on the bottom, right where it says the body, you see number 3. Underneath it, it says, this puts your body under a compulsion to act. You see, this physical instrument You know, the body is the instrument of the mind. So in other words, your body is the instrument of your own mind. So if you want to understand how to move on the compulsion, that's actually what I'm doing right now with these videos. I am not thinking in details about every single little thing that I want to say. And what happens is I have a general idea of what I want to do, in this case for the video, and then I simply, you know, start to feel like, okay, what's the message about? I try to search within my own emotions for what I'm after with my goals. Now, this is another way of saying I simply start asking myself how I would feel if my dreams were now a reality. Now, if your dreams are now a reality, it happens, you know, because then you have decided on what you want. You can't have a dream. You know, a dream is already indicating something that you would like to have. Now, by asking yourself how would you feel, well, then you're learning to discover the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Now, I have to really think about it again, because so many people, they study material like this, but they seem to be missing the feeling part in the equation, because the feeling part is much more subtle. Because of our school system, we're trained to use our reasoning mind. We're trained to read something, memorize it, and if we can repeat it, then we think we know. But with information like this, you don't want to study it like the general school system taught us how to study. You want to take these ideas and really apply them towards your own goals. So whatever those goals are, first of all, see it in your mind. You can do this if you try, if you give it an honest endeavor. Once you see it in your mind, make an honest endeavor as well to ask yourself how you would honestly feel if this dream were now a reality. Try to catch the mood of your fulfilled desires, because once you catch that mood, understand from that point on, you only have to focus on keeping that mood alive within yourself. You don't even have to think about anything from that point on. You simply keep the mood alive of your fulfilled desires. So you feel excited, you feel passionate, happy, motivated. You just know that you're going to go in the right direction as long as your emotional state is at the right level. You know, the emotional state is actually the energetic essence of your dream. Now, what I mean by that is you can think about how you would want your life to be, you can imagine it, but by invoking that emotional state, asking how would I feel, you're connecting on an emotional level, on an energetic level, with something that will ultimately become your physical reality. Because physical reality is nothing but energy thrown into a certain, you know, vibration, electricity. I know these terms are kind of weird because we're working with invisible forces of the universe, but they're thrown into form because of sort of energetic vibrations in the universe. So that means that anything you think and imagine already exists, but if it's not visible to your senses, it simply exists on another level of your own being. So moving on to compulsion is actually a very, very important thing that we want to train every day. If you wake up in the morning, always be sure to get into habit, to remind yourself, I need to simply feel my wish fulfilled. If I want to have a great relationship, I need to feel how I would feel if I already had one. If I was wealthy, I already have to feel what I would feel like if I were wealthy. If I'm happy, I would already have to feel how I would feel if I had a happy life. You see, this is what most people don't do. They wait. They wait before things change, before they will feel good. Well, if you wait before things change, before you feel good, well, then you're unable to move under this so-called compulsion, this technique of Neville Goddard. Because what he is talking about is simply moving from inward outwardly instead of from outwardly inwardly. What we mean by that, as I said in previous videos, is that you don't want the physical world to control you at all. Like he would always say, you know, throw away the evidence of your senses, ignore those evidence, the evidence of your senses. That's why there's a cross on the picture through the senses, because we're going to work with our conscious mind. We want to work with the conscious mind, because if we don't, we can never improve our lives the way we want. And I see this happen all the time with myself and everybody else around me in the world. And it's very sad, because the only thing a person really has to learn to do is simply exercise the imagination. And the more you exercise your wonderful imagination, the more powerful it becomes. It starts simple, perhaps with simple little goals, you would say. But these goals help you to awaken and to quicken your own imagination into activity on a greater and greater intensity. That's what you want to do. Now this ties in beautifully with something Joseph Murphy also said. I have it on my channel, one of his lectures, and he talked about a guy wanting to own his own store. Now the guy started to imagine he was the owner of a store, and by that assumption within himself, he was compelled to act in certain ways. Now this is what you can do for your own dreams. Simply assume that you already have the very thing that you desire to have and watch what happens. Now again, the only way to make something happen is to throw out all the contradicting thoughts and feelings and simply focus on first in conscious mind where you want to go. You're like, okay, this is where I want to go. Catch the mood. Honestly allow yourself to feel how you would feel if it was a reality. Keep your attention focused and tied to that emotional state, that excitement, that positivity that you actually feel if you now had the realization of your dream, if your life was now the life of your dream. And then the rest will take care of itself, because your body will be compelled to move and act in certain ways, which again is because your body is the instrument of your mind. So these are the 3 steps that you really want to understand concerning the concept of moving on the compulsion. First, you work with the imagination. From the imagination, you work to the emotional states. You influence your own emotional states within consciousness, and that then will compel your entire physical body to move under the compulsion of this inner state that you created willingly and deliberately within yourself. And this, if you really observe it, this is something that not many people are doing. Most people are not doing it at all. But you can start doing it. And you could show people in your own personal life that they can do this as well. If you become good at this, you can tell to others. You can look at them and help them see, you know, if you want to change your life, simply change the imaginary state from which you operate. And you can explain it to them without having to wonder, how does this work? Because you'll discover how it works by your own personal experience, by the achievements of your own peculiar and special little goals in your own, you could say, little world. It's a good thing if we all start to work on this individually, because that is how we raise the level of consciousness of the entire human race over time. So a very simple way of putting this all together again is that when I work on goals in my own life, like this video, I don't overthink what I plan on doing. This is a tendency many people have. They have a goal, but then they start to worry so much about the plan and what they should be doing or think they should be doing in order to get it. What you want to understand is that you can simply imagine yourself as if the goal was already a reality in your world. And then once you catch the mood, if you really start to feel within yourself how it actually would make you feel if this were a physical reality, well, then you're connected with your own dream on an energetic level. And as long as you keep that connection alive, as long as you keep your attention focused on how great it makes you feel, your body will always be compelled to act in a certain way to make it happen. Because then the picture I showed you earlier in the video will show you there's a clear sort of pathway from within your consciousness connected to your body that can help you improve your life. Really think about it, because most people can think about what they want, but they're not emotionally connected to what they want, so they're also not compelled to act in a different way. Because the feelings will ultimately also attract all the inspired ideas that you need in order to make your reality the way you want it to be. So really take this into consideration, because you can start applying this and working with this starting today concerning your own goals in life. And with that being said, never forget that we are the dreamers.